Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. Sitting in for Paul Harvey this morning. Stand by for commentary. Well, Americans, Mr. Harvey, during his programs, always tried to keep you guys and tell you guys what he saw coming down the pike. And he always used Rome as an example because he figured that you guys were like Rome. Well, you guys adopted some of the Roman ways along with the Venetians because you adapted the former government of the Venetians here with the Doge. That would be Biden today. Yeah. But in a sense, and Mr. Paul Harvey, if you can hear me up there with the boss, I must disagree with you on comparing them with Rome. Yeah, they do have the Roman things. I mean, they created Colosseums, which they call the National Football League. Yeah. But these Americans, I would call them sumAmericans. SumAmericans. Because you guys have more in common with the Sumerians than you do the Romans. And with your permission, Mr. Harvey up there, I'll try to explain this. The Sumerians, who lasted for 3,500 years, they came into existence around 4,000 BCE with summer. And they were a group of city-states. And that was the predominantly thing through the Earth's history. Has been not nation-states, but city-states. Nation-states is something new. City-states were a long time there. Egypt was the only nation-state that was there for a while, until recent times. Like I say, 1000 AD, when nation-states started operating here, or kingdoms as they were called. But before that, Egypt was the only known nation-state. But before Egypt, there was actually one guy that tried to make a nation-state, although they called it an empire. So there was a group of cities in Mesopotamia, which were Sumerian. They adopted the Sumerian language. They adopted the Sumerian way of writing, cuneiform. But they had their own interests at heart. Cities like Nineveh, Ur, Acre, Sumer, Babylon, Asher later. Yeah, those cities. Now, the Sumerian Empire, or the Sumerian, classical Sumerian, lasted for 2 millennia. And a lot of city-states ruled between them, starting with Sumer. And the reason I say that you Americans are the same as the Sumerians, and I call you sumAmericans, because you got 50 states. You tried to unify yourself, something that the Sumerians didn't do, but it didn't work because you're really not unified. You got people in Texas who have different opinions of people in New York, and people in California, as in Florida, and people in Michigan, which, hey, who cares about Michigan, right? Yeah. Or how about Delaware? Oh, well, we can't talk bad about Delaware because you know who's from Delaware, right? But the people in Delaware is a small little, puny little thing that really shouldn't matter. Should it? Connecticut? Rhode Island? Yeah, see what I mean? That's the same as the Sumerians. Sumer was a small city compared to other cities, Nineveh, Ur, Acre, or Akkad, which was a big city. They were bigger than Sumer. But they didn't have the goals that Sumer had. Sumer was a united city for most of its life. Acre, well, they were like the United States with all the 50 states here, and the Republicans and Democrats, and all the factions, and everybody lived in enclaves. And these were the cities. They were enclaves, same as you. You go into a city like Atlanta and you got enclaves. Go to New York City, you got enclaves. Detroit's got enclaves. Chicago's got enclaves. Los Angeles, oh, they have a lot of enclaves over there. And every city's got their Chinatown, Koreatown, Russiatown in New York. Yeah. They used to have an Italian, they used to have a Pole Town, but that's raghead country today. Yeah, right. See what I mean? You guys are living in a Sumerian style of living, not the Romans. Yeah. Well, and what happened to the Sumerians? Well, each city took turns. Sumer for a while. Then it was Akkad, the Arcadians, and Ur, the last of the classical Sumerian cities. In the 24th century BCE, your three great religions. Abraham, and he left Ur, and he settled in what is now Palestine, or Canaan, as they used to call it, which his group then split even further. Some stayed in Palestine, some went to Egypt, and some went down to the Arabian Peninsula. They lost track for about a millennia. They lost track of their ancestors because their ancestors were having problems. In 2004 BCE, Ur fell to the Emonites. And this goes back to Abraham, okay? 400 years before. Abraham had to go through the Emonite territory, which is today Iran. Emonites were a predecessor of the Persians, ancestors. But they viewed the world the same way the Persians did, or the Iranians today. And when Abraham's group went there, they probably were saturated with the Mizrah religion, which is an old Persian religion. And they took stories from Samaria, that's any city in Sumer, that was Mesopotamia, about the Garden of Eden, the Great Flood. Okay? And when they got to the Emonite territory, they probably encountered Mizrah and took some of that too and incorporated it in them because Mizrah had one God. One God. Okay? And this is 1,000 years before the Jewish religion would start, Judaism. 1,000 years. 1,400 years before. And this is what I'm saying, Americans. This is your problem here with the United States. And when they went to Canaan, the group that went south into Egypt, and mind you, Egypt in 2400 BC was the Middle Kingdom was halfway around its time. 100 years later, the Middle Kingdom would cease to exist, and Egypt was in turmoil for another 700 years. So the Sumerians, from whatever cities, some from Ur, some from other cities, that disengaged from Abraham in the Palestine, settled in Egypt, and got their religion from the Emonites, and their stories from the Sumerians. Same with the Arabian Peninsula. They took a longer time to develop over there. But the Egyptians, for the most part, kept them separate. But 800 years later, in 1300 BC, there was a pharaoh that adopted that thinking, Akhenaten, and became a one god for a little while. The Egyptians didn't like that in there. And the people that came from Ur, another country, other things there, their descendants were becoming more to themselves and lost other than the stories that they had, they lost their language, they lost everything. Same with the people that went to the Arabian Peninsula. Then the Egyptians, some say under Ramses II, and Moses, don't remember him? Yeah, Moses. You listening, Americans? He threw him out, and Moses parted the Red Sea, and they went back to Canaan. Yeah. But remember, they were centuries later, almost 1,000 years later, when they went back to Canaan. So they had nothing in common with the people in Canaan. The people in Canaan had nothing in common with Mesopotamia. And this is about 1200 BC, or 1000 BC. Okay? Now, after the fall of Ur in 2004 BCE, there were still other cities, but they weren't the classic Sumerians. Babylon came into existence under Hammurabi. It came and it went. And then you had cities like Ashur, the Assyrians, which were the last of the Babylonian era, except for Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar tried to revive Babylon. The Assyrians took their ancestors, they didn't know it at the time, when they invaded Israel and destroyed Israel in 722 BCE. Same with the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Those were their descendants and brothers and sisters that they destroyed and took them over to Babylonia. So the Mesopotamians there, the ones that survived became the Arabs. Because the Jewish were banned. They came back, but the Romans banned them in 70 AD, and they were thrown all over the place. The only Sumerian tribe that survived, up until this day, without getting ever conquered, is the tribes that became the Arabian tribes. And they adopted their own language, a whole bunch of languages between that and the formation of Arabic between 1st and 4th century AD. So, this is what I'm saying, Americans. This is what's happening to you here. And I hope Mr. Harvey is listening closely upstairs. Because you got 50 different states with a lot of factions. Political, gender, and pigmentation factions. And if you guys don't resolve that, you're going to go the way of the Sumerians. Sitting in for Paul Harvey this morning, this is your favorite alien. Good day.